India की terrorist की situation का ऐसी ऐसी just a general definition का ऐसी देखो नि UN people definition अदुम को use तो भी आएगा use तो नहीं करती. But like I said, there is no universally accepted definition of terrorism. Someone's terrorist is someone's hero. The global terrorism index, like for prelims point of view, answer terrorism related question if I see the mention the India position in the world. Right now, 2022, we are in 12th rank. 7, 8, then 12. So I think it's an improvement. This is released in Canada, released Institute of Economics and Peace Sydney, based on think tank. It's not an international organization, it's a think tank. I don't know, terrorist in India situation as diverse India is, as diverse the problem of terrorism itself is. India terrorism India faced terrorist security challenges almost all the range of terrorist challenges and all the diversities within this movement or within the so-called terrorist groups. This now, like I see the the slide. Some types of terrorism have that in a call. I see, it's no nationalist terrorism. I see equally noticed a lady, but kind of woman. I think he said, actually, the Penum mentioned of the Hockey call. I noticed the insurgent Hina mentioned the Wenoko or Jammu Kashmir, insurgent Hina Tarakaniba. So there is a fine line. Difference between insurgents and terrorists. Aduna question the insurgent I mentioned Toro I recommend you just to stick to that word insurgents call. Terrorist from the high within this terrorism high manung sida insurgency norris left wing extremism so terrorism notice the insurgency and then notice insurgency the violence aspect of the view of the terrorism you would say if in the question insurgent have a word to use Toraga and do the hangmo already do not divert away from the term, just stick to the term insurgents call. And terrorism, the question we have to include the Norris insurgents also, because it's part of terrorist group. Like I said, the types of terrorism that we see in India, the types of terrorist groups, depending on their goals and their ideologies and their orientation. It's no nationalist terrorism, and the ethnicity based over separatism, the based over separate state nation formed within away by breaking from the state of India, and then employing violence means to achieve their political goals. It's no nationalist terrorism and high Masisi India the Jammu and Kashmir. So in the beginning of this insurgents movement, we can consider it as part of ethno-nationalist terrorist group. But as it stands today, it is turning more towards religious terrorism, tilting more towards that than on the ethno-nationalist terrorism. India Northeast India insurgency group. Almost every insurgency group in Northeast India city is no nationalist terrorism. And almost I because I might miss out here and there when there are many terrorist groups, so I might miss out one or there which are not based on this And also, I think there is one group already in Assam. I think I've mentioned that in our discussion on notice insurgency. Can religion the based over Amalai notice Assam that based over. Adubu, by and large, is no nationalist terrorism, as he noticed the Asina, or it's a feature of the terrorism in North India. Have that. Sri Lanka LTTE movement, the Tamil Tiger, the high civil war, operation I am lotion heavy we consider them as nationalist terrorism. And then the other one is religious terrorism. Religious terrorism, now religious terrorism, it's like I said yesterday, it's dominating the terrorist key landscape have that terrorist key literature when we talk about terrorism, like the kind of terrorism that we associate now in this time is religious terrorism. Religious terrorism we can see all over India. Kashmir, various parts of India, we have been victims of these attacks from terrorists based on religion. And then we have left-wing extremism based on the Maoist ideologies, left-leaning ideologies. Central India part not only in Central India part Northeast India Northeast India the KCP or KCP PLA they are part of this left-wing terrorist group. Then narco-terrorism, as you mentioned, they are focused on creating illegal narcotics traffic zones called drug kamari lainaba. Drug nafit tauba or drug revenue the based tauba or drug trade to control taunambagi damakta violence employed tauba group sing narco terrorism and this on top of that, I see this is India that these are just types based on their goal and their ideologies. More than this. We also see what we call the state-sponsored terrorism. As India, the terrorist groups in city, high river groups in yes, massive groups in eight river state by external states. And then we have the problem of homegrown terrorist organizations, then state-sponsored terrorist organizations, and then state employing violence or terrorism as a policy, like what Pakistan is doing to us, and then non-state actors, terrorist violence, and then state actor, or you imagine almost all types of terrorism that you can imagine is present in India. And then terrorism scenario say both state sponsored and then non-state actors. And then when it comes to types, we have nationalist terrorism, religious terrorism, left-wing terrorism, narco-terrorism. India, you can imagine whatever the type is, you will find one or two groups which can be identified with any of the groups that we can list or we can subdivide as types of terrorists or terrorist group. Then what is here? Okay, this is the question. What did I mention here? Let's do that thing. So knowing what are the challenges that we face terrorism, let us look at some of the areas according to Jammu Kashmir insurgency tawdrin about JNK Khalistan tawdrin male to ai moteli Khalistan chidi how's it going the internal security issues am adumak but we can write as a passing reference in our answer aduga Khalistan is specific when a hang so I hang but nevertheless, it is good to learn from the lesson of Khalistan. Adu Jammu Kashmir ang hatchatse. Jammu Kashmir se aina ngasai so have pandre madudi insurgency amasung terrorism asi ani se we see both of this element together in the state of Jammu Kashmir. Notice this adubu it is more profound here because kari the element of religious terrorism so henna profound hoiba mafam atopodagi or henna pronounced hoiba masi from chida. I don't know, let's revisit a little bit of how it all started in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, now the Union Territories of Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh. We all know that part of the India independent partition the princely states has the right to accede either to India or Pakistan or be independent. Jammu Kashmir history Jammu Kashmir has been the center of almost all the religions. Hindu center or and then Buddhist centers or if I'm not wrong, the fourth Buddhist council was held in Kashmir. And then Muslims in India, Muslim rulers in India, it was under the Islamic influence for some time. And then Punjab, Ranjit Singh, part of Ranjit Singh kingdom, the Ranjit Singh kingdom, the Dogra ruler of Kashmir, the Hari Singh, the one who signed the instrument of accession, Mogi dynasty to line up the Lakuni. My point is, Jammu Kashmir has been the centers of the major religions that is present in India and around in that region. India independent pangapa matam 1947 matam sidadi kari kanana rule torami Jammu Kashmir se haiba matam da Dogra ruler Hari Singh haiba pasina rule torami. The state of Jammu and Kashmir is such that 77% when the high just say around 77% higher because exact population to the usually I'm sure it was like 77% is the percentage that they give. Around 77% of the population is Muslim, but the ruler is a Hindu ruler, Dogra Hindu ruler. And then the state is also such that it is strategically important for the newly emerging state of Pakistan, and also the larger geopolitical calculation of the major power of that time. So why do I say this? Jammu Kashmir Moigi demography so towards the east Leh Ladakh the Moigi religion Buddhist ningba people of Tibetan origin if not origin Indo-Tibetan race the from the South Kashmir the Jammu the Hindu majority or Hindu Sikhs Hindu from the Amuka Muslims in Srinagar Valley Kashmir Valley Muslim in Manung Sidashu Aswam is a Gilgit Baltistan site set. Asita di Muka Kanala Ibra Hiraga Shia Muslims Karlego, the Masi tribe to Pashtun tribe koigumba ko adugumba khara laikre ado asigi within this asigi valley areas in Kashmiri lon ngangba ko adugumba Muslim sing from the chakradi Kashmiri lon se ngang the vibe tare na pa that at least the composition percentage to the oidre the asini moi ki keno se layam me matam du condition se asmane laivasida of course India was to be partitioned and India was ultimately partitioned masida the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir se so he what is said about this guy this ruler Hari Singh is that he is indecisive point or the decision tough decision lo matam da kitang to the indecisive point ba aduguma character amani ma se ko then ma se he was not decided on whether to join India or Pakistan, so he wants to take time, so he signed stencil agreement with Pakistan of signed alright but Pakistan Pakistan geopolitical calculation and geopolitical calculation of the greater powers of the major powers of that time. I'll come to that now. Pakistan ki map and now this issue is going to become even the future problems that we will have with Pakistan. We are having now, but also in the coming future. Water. Pakistan is a water scarce country. The only major river is the Indus River. Indus River it goes to Pakistan from the state of Kashmir. On top of that, the 5 rivers of Punjab, which ultimately fell into the state of into Pakistan and which are tributaries of Indus, Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Bias, Ravi. Can pronounce over by the Bias and pronounce Chumbe Hangiago. Ravi Asigo Masihai river Mukash India the Horapa or it through India passes to rivers in Singapore. And then there the main river in the say within the state of Jammu and Kashmir is Pakistan on the high level. Aduna importance of Jammu and Kashmir for Pakistan. First is the Muslim majority, 77%. Why? Because Pakistan state was created on the ideology of two nation theory, on the belief that Hindus and Muslim constitute 2 different nations. And Kashmir, by being a Muslim majority state, they believe that they should join Pakistan. They should go with Pakistan. But Maharaja Hari Singh was indecisive. He signed a standstill agreement with Pakistan saying that no, I'm here to decide, so no activity until decision is made. And on top of that, this issue of the strategic importance of Jammu and Kashmir because of its rivers, because of the being source of the major rivers that is coming to Pakistan, which is perhaps the most important source of water for the whole of Pakistan. On top of that, the Pakistan side the geopolitics of the world in general and of the political considerations of the major powers at play during that time. Around 1930s, in 1947, 48, or even before that, after the Bolshevik Revolution and the beginning of USSR and the first communist state in the world, there was already an ideological clashes between the capitalists and the communists. And communist was trying its best to spread its influence around the world to bring about the world revolution. Somewhere around 1930s, so I see that China Mao Makada left wing communist revolution. Russia stepped in support of this revolutionaries. And then 1947, the emerging of like Cold War era how history there is ideological clashes between these two ideologies. So they want to have an associate. This is also one of the calculations for the creation of Pakistan or acceding to the demands of the Muslim League for the creation of Pakistan. This is one of the factors. And these factors also plays true for the state of Jammu and Kashmir. That they want to have control over this area because this is vital because of its access to China. World community Kashmir issue Britain, in fact, they wanted this part of Kashmir to join Pakistan, though it doesn't happen. That's the major world scenario of that time. So, with this situation in background and indecisiveness of Maharaja Hari Singh, Pakistan through the use of the tribesmen of this region called Kashmir se invade Maharaja Hari Singh, of course, his state was a princely state, so the army or the defense of the princely states, if we look in the history of India, is in the hands of British power to great extent. Aduna he does not have a very strong army of its own, so he cannot defend his kingdom. They come to India. India they approached our India says sign the instrument of accession. Until then, we cannot send our troops because, as it stands, during that time, Kashmir was still not part of India. You say we cannot send in your troops, sign in the instrument of accession, then we send in the troops. The instrument of accession was signed in October 1947. Signed the India troop so we started pushing back. Occupation push back to this is cover even in WhatsApp, Facebook, popular theory that India Kashmir POK reasons Pakistan occupied Kashmir. This is still under Pakistan occupation because of Nehru blunders. Whether it was a blunder or not is for you to decide for your own. But I'll narrate the history now, a little bit of that history. There are people who still says that Nehru did the right thing in the sense that considering the situation of that time, the resource available with India and the environment of that time, that was the right thing to do. And some people say that was the wrong move, and then the situation in Kashmir now is because of Nehru and things like that. Pakistan should push into forces. India because after signing the instrument of accession, Indian army, Indian troops formally entered the state of Jammu and Kashmir. They started fighting the battles. Nehru na masigi issue UN the poor. UN Pubugan UN agreement ceasefire declared ceasefire declared. So the possibilities of pushing more fighting and pushing the line of control, as we know now, which was previously the ceasefire line, further west Pakistan on the push possibilities ceasefire ceasefire was announced, then fighting stops and they remain ducking in this line called Aduni. So me commentator had Nehru not go to go to the UN and we keep pushing back, situation might have been different. But this is all in hindsight. One of the reasons why Nehru wants to stop this pushing back, that there is one important personalities by the name of Sheikh Abdullah. HEIHK or Maleko. Sheikh Abdullah. One of the important personalities in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. I'm narrating all this because Kashmir insurgency, it has its history in the roots, and history and roots here. Maybe 5 minutes because if we know the problem, the root cause, then it's easier for us to answer no matter what question they ask. Our question can be more profound and more better. So Masida Sheikh Abdullah Ibn Pase, one of the towering personalities in the history of Kashmir, from modern Kashmir. Masi Nupasina Kari Tauramge Tamda. The Kashmir, like I said, it was a monarchy with Muslim majority and minority Hindus and other religion, and the king being a Hindu king. That's one like 1925-30s, in the height of nationalism in the parts of India. Kashmir did Kari Tauge Haivum Tamda. Sheikh Abdullah lead Tauraga. There were demands for reforms, giving of more power to the people against the monarchy. Monarchy is popular people's rule, movement, reforms in administration, in welfare, in jobs, in land reforms, economic distribution, the reform movement personality say he also played an instrumental part in the ascension of Kashmir to India. I'm coming back to where I left before. Why one of the reasons which is said to have stopped or prevail upon Nehru from pushing further towards the west is because Sheikh Abdullah it is alleged to have said that his influence does not spread beyond the Kashmir Valley, beyond this region that we know now as within the administration of India. This is also, I think, not a very bad idea if we look at the decisions that they come into and then the situation of that time. Like I said, population though, the demography of Kashmir. The Pashtuns, tribal groups, I don't have influence there. India perhaps, because occupation of a territory is not the end of integration. Asiki territory is Indian occupied or Mekalo. What about the people here? Madugi Matandugi people in revolt already, fight already, land already. Asiki calculation. This is also one of the calculation. Why? Because India during the time of independence has a lot of work to do. He has to build a nation. He has to integrate the state. India was in shambles when Britishers left India. Economy, poverty, hunger, education, on all aspects, India was lacking. And then it was a humongous task before the nation builders. I don't know calculation that decision to stop India's westward movement had that in about. And then now let's come back to insurgency. As he said, Abdullah in Singapore, he was leading, in essence, a movement against the monarchy. So, as the situation is that Kashmir ascended to India, Centaure. That is there. Remember this also. The population, the Muslim population in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and the economy and distribution of resources in Jammu and Kashmir was also such that administration achau post mayam say minorities Hindu community se moi se moina dominate kar tawba, and then land lam da su moina hena pai like the more lands were with them ko aduna there were resentment against the majority population ko the monarchy, or even the monarchy that we know most of the time it is associated with misrule ko adugumba like it's not the people voice, it's the king's voice who rules the state. The king's word is the law ko. On top of that, high river, the resources in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the most important resources perhaps of that time is land, and land was mostly in the hands of the Hindus. So Sheikh Abdullah lead the movement as a corollary to that movement. Adum lakpasida moina hojiki land reforms Jammu Kashmir se India yaw prabhutungda land reforms kayam tawe moi desuko adugumba tawbuduna karino hairaga because since society did not operate in isolation, economy the higher economy the khakta state se or society se chalai banatina ko adugumba laiba differences me amdo asomjati horendi karida onthora communal balance and communal issue the onthora adu communal balance se thopa hore based on religious ground ko thopa hore adu mane laira ko conditions sida kari tawra I haga matamda India's government policy in Jammu and Kashmir se Jammu Kashmir se ascent or India the ascent of matamda there were lots of autonomies given to the state of Jammu and Kashmir when article 370 and then 335A hai baba dugumba and moi ascent of matamda so moina ya gi bisi ascent of bisi only communication, finance, defense, international relation ko asigumba kattene ba moina ascent of meaning India the ithok the part of over the rest, almost all the other powers that the state enjoyed beforehand remains with the state. And so the arrangement was also such that no law of the Indian Parliament can be applied to the state of Jammu and Kashmir without the consent of the state legislative assembly of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Article 370, 35A, moina piba autonomy mayam se mo enjoy tarala. Adu India government is karino hairaga in its policy of integration of Kashmir, high peak of autonomy mayam se move towards more integration ko. And then on top of that, Kashmir India joint of the show mayam do not like like yanning the group to the call and then fully integrate the it was the relationship was more based on autonomy. And on top of that, Nehru na UN the UN resolution there was to be a plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir for the people of Jammu and Kashmir to decide whether they want to join India or they want to join Pakistan. Plebiscite plebiscite has not yet been conducted so far. This is not our fault. And when I say Ekoi, I'm talking about India. Okay. According to the UN resolution, the resolution was such that Pakistan has to withdraw all its force from the state of Jammu and Kashmir. India also will withdraw with minimum forces in Jammu and Kashmir for maintenance of law and order. Adu fulfill the plebiscite but now the story of the plebiscite is gone. Pakistan never withdrew its force, and then India was also followed more of the policy of integration of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the latest development in this is removal of Article 370 and Article 35A. Now that is the India's approach in Jammu and Kashmir. And then the people of Jammu and Kashmir desire autonomy the based Auraga Yana relation though they see that they're losing more and more power. And on top of that, the growing communal tensions and communal violence. Communal tensions and communal violence aided not only by religion, but by also political and economic factors, and also factors around the world. Factors around the world, the rise and movements in the Islamic world, and Islamic ideologies and Islamic movements around the world. As is India, the impact like. Some important incidents the Kashmiri Singh low incidents. For example, arrest of Sheikh Abdullah, I think it was in 1956, mid 1950s arrest of because Sheikh Abdullah Hanadi, he plays a major role in integration of or ascension of Kashmir to India. He kind of grows delusional also, and because of India's policy in Kashmir, because India is for integration, is for autonomy, and then like high level policies, land reform policy, like India sees the rise of Abdullah as an issue with them, so arrest over. But ultimately, he was released. Arrest. India policy India's alleged interference in the polity of Jammu and Kashmir. And 1987, if I'm not wrong, the election, late 1980s, the election election reading election Congress ka National Conference a political party alliance and then others top parties in the top parties in the I am religious ideology influence hen parties Madu elections in late 1980s, exact 1987 and to find a elections reading accusations what actually happened is Madu elections do not triggering point of high BI because partners of high BI. The leadership JKLF Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front ko JKLF masigi movements Madu election gi matungda boost of many of the active members of the rival political parties, even their candidates ko as you say they cross over towards POK because more democratic the processes when democratic processes fail, when democratic measures for solving any issues fail, the means that often adopted by the groups which fail to achieve its goal via the democratic means and democratic schemes and democratic institution is the use of violence. Groups POK crossover trained by Pakistan, and then Azad Kashmir demand over. This is the short story. On top of that, the external factors, Pakistan. So by this time, late 1980s, the India and Pakistan, they have fought two major wars already. 1947-48 two major wars. Fight 1965, the 71 the fight. So 1965 to 1965 the kari tawgi hai matamda moina Pakistan na khan badi they infiltrators Kashmir Valley the tharaga Kashmir Valley the unrest create taraga moina khan the public support pangani an khan ne public support taraga public movement ka pull laga punjil laga India se Kashmir se India the lofok an khan ne mo se ko and on top of that, in 1965, the India was smarting from the defeat with China in 1962 war. Moral down, Pakistan probably thought that this is the right time to strike. 1965 war happened. They cannot do anything, and they suffered losses. And then 1971, we end up more in India disintegrate ultimately it is Pakistan which ultimately break down and gave birth to the state of Bangladesh. Pakistan by now has got a taste of India's strength. They started adopting a policy, what we call cut India by 1,000, bleed India by 1,000 cuts. This is the policy adopted by the state of Pakistan in dealing with India. Cut India by, bleed India by 1,000 cuts. So they started supporting terrorist groups. Now see the operation to Pak Hainapa. Pakistan launched an operation for supporting any anti-India elements and insurgencies in Northeast, in Jammu and Kashmir. The 1980 late 80s the election the issue Jammu Kashmir discontent later to the JKLF violence resort over Horeko. Adu masigi timeline sida another important international events also took place. Madudi Karino Hairaga from the Afghanistan our extended neighborhood. Afghanistan, if you remember, Mujahids, Taliban in the USSR, and then USSR was withdrawing from Afghanistan during this time. The moral among the Mujahideen, the moral among the militants, the terrorists were so high because ultimately they defeated a world power, world superpower of that time. And what is India? You compare with USSR, nothing during that time. Superpower would defeat the USSR. Adu high river insurgents group Mujahideen Singh Sidi Kanana support we have through the state of Pakistan, US na 8 groups in Cold War strategy when used to but the one operating or the ones directly in touch with these militants is the state of Pakistan. Insurgents they have been fighting here, and then USSR left the so the ideological driven movement, religiously driven movement. So they divert their energy and interests towards Kashmir. International factor, then JKLF because of internal discontent, and then ever ready Pakistan to help any anti-India elements, and the geopolitical calculation of Kashmir and their animosity with India. Adu combined what we see in early 89s and early 90s is the burning insurgency and terrorism in Kashmir during this time scale. Kashmiri file Kashmir file kind of movie though it is around this time, early late 80s and 90s. Now that is the basic history. Now let us go to insurgency in terrorism in general. Jammu and Kashmir insurgency reason and then on terrorist movements who high because insurgency also comes under terrorism. External elements have Pakistan external internal JKLF domestically grown internal groups and then but Jaish-e-Mohammed Lashkar-e-Taiba group these are not locally grown groups. Hizbul Mujahideen, India, the base of homegrown movement. And to the Kashmir insurgency, there was also like conflicts and tensions among the group itself, within the different groups. There are also other groups, but this is the one which survive in that internal fight for tough war in Jammu and Kashmir. But the external actors like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, they're still strong. In Pakistan, terrorist groups there is a tendency to favor the Pakistani base terrorist group more than the homegrown, but now they're shifting that one also. And what I want to stress here is the presence of both internal and external, homegrown and then imported groups within this terrorist group in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Asi laira. Adubu masigi movement se 1990s to early 2000 as we have am kalam movement se. But in 1990s the Armed Forces Special Power Act so Kashmir extend apply the military operations, India counterinsurgencies, and India other policies the insurgency. If we look in the history of insurgency, what you see here is public support, and then at some point of time it will go down. Any movements, the peaks maintained over people were also becoming tired of this movement because people were dying. Who wants to live in a state of war all the time? So on top of that, election is also one of the reasons for the growth of insurgencies in Jammu and Kashmir, right? So the one like you see the democratic elections in India it's a bold move on the side of India. The mind of violence is like still India conducted elections. India election tower in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Like people are also more and more coming towards the democratic process again. Their trust in this democratic process like disillusionment with the militant groups or with the militant movement, the arms movement. There is nothing to show off. What do they have to show off? Fight it taure, namai kamnare, bomb pohaire, mi sire all the time. But what is there to show off? Result of direct taba. Aduguma mayam si panina. The fatigue element was set in Torre, and then the efforts, because of the efforts by India, high river by early 2000s, insurgency is coming down. Adubu 2002 the insurgency rises again, terrorism rises again. Musikari high and then the trend of these terrorist groups in Jammu and Kashmir is also such that people train Pakistan side, India side, so when 2002 the present trends, when trends, what we are seeing is synergies of these two groups. High level group anise hand and nakshil like JKLF, the movement who demand of the group ani some who demands for Azad Kashmir, in freedom of Kashmir and then some group which like J.C. Muhammad Laskari Taiba which were pro-Pakistan what we are seeing now, India elements, India fighters I am one of the Hizbul Mujahideen groups Kashmir homegrown militants we are seeing a kind of convergence of this different terrorist groups more objective to converge and then recruitment that we hire Hanadi Indian militants in group homegrown militant groups that the Pakistan the base of a group, J.C. Muhammad Kumbala Skari Taiba Gumbako, Masigimbo group Sidasu. The Ministry of Home Affairs Kimogi Datagi Mutung in the Hierarchical Masikarino Haraga. Asigi group Sida Yarako recruitment is almost 50-50 natrasu, let's say 50 like 50-40 Gumbi ratio the number is not important, but what is important is the convergence of these various terrorist groups and also the objective. One worrying factor say Hanadi Azad Kashmir or Kashmir Banega Pakistan Islamic state, Islamic rule state political objective religious objective from the my this is a major cause of concern. Masida Jammu Kashmir IS JNK ko ISIS Jammu and Kashmir gaina thora ko se ko asi worrying factor ne. This is a trend ko masigi trend sida akhona mukari uge haiba matamda hanadi what of course yes public protest ko malai rameko adu after 2008 sida mukari tawge haiba Amarnath Yatra gaina ko pawda taramuni ko masi sida Amarnath Shrine Board. Yes, the way. Masigi shrine, as the Hindus in the pilgrimage at Pasida, high river shrine, and do the state of Jammu and Kashmir and Lam Karapi, I think around 100 acres of land. More of the pilgrims sing to get line farm infrastructure, the campsite recreation, the people protested. Yeah, the mind the line. Pakistan could loin the Pakistan and they try to radicalize the youth, the general population goes through the mosques and then through various propaganda machineries of the mind protest in a way one that is one of the triggering factor. Aduga hausikina ubusi moigi kind of say trains in the Kashmir militants trains in the youth youth say like violent approaches adopted. Stone pelting at one point of time, stone pelting was becoming almost every week phenomenon after Friday prayer. So we don't know when it's going to start again. So adukumba elements in stone pelting, the mass participation in this violent participation. Issues may be like some military operation, killing of some insurgents in Kashmir, or issues like the Amarnath Temple Shrine, the lane issue, any issue, adoption of violence means by the public and the youth at large. This is one of the trend. Aduga Amanamuk Karino Hairaga. Use of social media. Social media, akuna asigi means no should taramuni. He's just one Hizbul Mujahideen commander ni Hardcre. Adu Maz is just one name, but you will see his name in almost all the recent security related literature on Kashmir. Kari Hairaga. Social media say man used to influence used to like Kari militants say hero type the project or and then propaganda through social media. Social media so the internet connectivity and then internet mobile penetration using internet uses chanana military Hizbul Mujahideen commander shina atopam use but his name come at the forefront just a name. Social media is used tauraga more propaganda is spread tauba, and then the movement was given a kind of legendary or mythical status and the mass following gain tauraga used through the use of social media no may any military operation chat any success or failure update public say through social media engaged over influenced over trends and then when he was killed you can just type in YouTube and see his funeral. Like asida kun trends first is stone pelting phenomenon use of social media or the name of Burhan Wani emerges at the forefront, and then projection of these militants as hero through the use of social media and then they were anointed as martyrs who died for the cause of Islam for the cause of Kashmir. They were anointed as martyrs, and then moigi funerals burials it in fact become a recruiting ground for this for the insurgents. state coverage, media coverage ya me kunul akadra. But high river kind of things, terrorists things, Indian security force neutralized of that Hatkimutan Mogi bureau say attended by thousands and thousands of people. I don't know how the public sentiment and support. I see some handgalak pagi mami tarakwa. And then in as a high you though. And 2018 yeah, the number of militant skills sida hana foreign fighters na yamane ko dubu 2018 number of fighters, Indian fighters, Indian base core, Indian militants insurgent skill record high in the between 2015 to 2020 ko number of militant skills Indian militants in a yamapa but didn't have the kari have no at any side mamang supan Pakistan based terrorist group pro Pakistan ki group sida Indian militant masing ke sum hengal proportion do Indian ki group Hizbul Mujahideen poida gumba yaw boga moy yaw haibet manarakpa on top of the number of insurgents killed in India mission hena yamapa which is a worrying sign because and in the street protest violence means stone pelting young people of young age and then anointment as martyr of those insurgents neutralized by Indian security forces and the kind of public sentiment that was shown towards these young men who were killed in this insecurity forces operation and then public interference in military operation. Social media and news the jeep ki mamang the mi pullaga a major gogoi ko mana thau bagi ama photo unaram bayai adu me am do kari gino harga in fact it is the public na nung tharak di no mai di ka pe adrena ko adu but nevertheless the people were attacking, the protesters were attacking the armed forces, but they cannot fire at them with live bullets. Adu fire tawba yai hare madu taw ki the implications ko hena volatile or hena violent or anything can happen in Kashmir and then India's facing international community mudu me am factor in taw the major go way hare ban pasina nupa ma se pharaga jeep ki mamang da pullaga the me mayam mark the thought over the man escape because it was in news even in international news violation of human rights but that's a different story whether he did the right thing or wrong thing it is for us as an individual to decide but the point here is growing public interference in military operations I see elements even in hill areas maybe in this small part in the valley also as any army or the naharon jakra lai a military operation machathaba matamdan khungi nupi singna ko nupi ahan singna ji cordon tawba adi operation tawba yaroi changba yaroi kana yaroi gaina ko adum thing but adum elements is hojik Jammu and Kashmir so dum urakpa so this is a trend and then what is again emerging in this Jammu and Kashmir specific another element is overground worker. Overground workers they are part of the militant organizations like arm carer ultimately they can become an arm carer they act as an eye and ear for the armed militants more information people and the public propaganda overground organization you know what I'm talking about arms logistic the support of overground groups as one of the concerning and then what is emerging perhaps the most challenging is hybrid terrorism is Kashmir hybrid terrorism Karino Haraga. It's a kind of see hybrid terrorists, they are not affiliated or perhaps associated with the militant organization as such. Adubu, they are paid to do certain job. For example, I'm an individual. Of course, I'm radicalized. I sympathize maybe with their movement. Adubu, I'm not a member of a terrorist organization, but someone approached me and say, you kill this police officer of that police station. I'm going to give you this much amount of money. Give me the guns. I go and kill him. My job is finished. I'm not a terrorist. I just kill him, but I'm not a formal member of any of the terrorist organizations. Asigumugi trends, hybrid terrorism, hybrid terrorist trends. It's an emerging trend, and Masida, because how are you going to book me as a terrorist? Because I'm not related to any of the terrorist organizations, but I just kill someone. So what you can do perhaps is murder the charge of BBI, manslaughter the charge of BBI. The terrorist act the ayu pan me agatra yaroidra. Asigumu challenges me amsi laigo ko. And then hybrid terrorism is one of the emerging trend. Mosin nomai kapa hat ko dokaktanati. Nang pochai se matraga nomai se ashima from the ashima ko. It can be driver ko. It can be anyone overground in hybrid terrorism. Asigumu mi sina oigro gunability. It can be anyone. It can be a small boy. It can be a doctor. It can be an MLA. It can be an engineer, doctors. Anyone. So, but the idea is growing difficulties in dealing with these groups. So, types of terrorist group, and then we see both state actors and non-state actors. State actors in Pakistan, non-state actors are Hizbul Mujahideen, NNCN, UNLF, most non-state actors in India, and then what do we see? One more do we see? The religious terrorism, the Al Qaeda India, the Al Qaeda element, Kashmiri militants or Islam either insurgency group, so they're moving more towards religious terrorism, and then left-wing terrorism, Maoism in central India. Next cluster, terrorism, money laundering, club, organized crime, club, perhaps classic crux what is terrorism and the types of terrorism that we are having, and the root of the major terrorist organizations that we see in India. Naxalism Kashmir explain and then and the growing challenges called the people support, and then growing trend in terrorist groups, even in their approach, even in their strategy, use of overground workers, hybrid terrorism, strategies, and then use of Burhan Wani case as one case of effective use of technologies in spreading this and popularizing this movement, and also the use of this internet and information and communication technology for radicalization. And the cause of this terrorist movement hierarchy India, the cause kari maram na terrorist by now I think you must be able to give at least 4 reasons. Cause of terrorism India, I think you should be able to give at least 4 minimum 4 causes. One that I discussed presence of state actors like Pakistan who happily and gleefully aiding this terrorist movement. The second is the historical factors. Third is the growing radicalization. Fourth, excesses of the armed forces. Burhan Wani, I think he's just class 10 pass. Nowhere class 10. Militant organization the Yao Gibney. Adubu, mana Yao Gibs, Karigidamaka Yao Gibno, having Tanda. excesses on the part of the armed forces. This is one of the reasons. As in it is said that like incident the his encounter with armed forces, he and his brother adugumba like push like an adding factor have tarina. The mind or yaw hibni haina. Hi, Magi Shishu. I don't know Simari Paudi Kange. And then Shida economic factors involved OVI, and then political factors involved OVI. When things cannot be achieved in a democratic means through democratic mechanisms, what often resort to violence. So global India effort in tackling global terrorism. India effort higher Global Counter-Terrorism Forum. I don't think I need to explain. India na organization for multilateral cooperation and counter-terrorism measures ni Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. Perhaps Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism se accept tawdri yanadri negotiation de lairi ha tare Masida Maru element there is a proposal for creating a universal definition of terrorism. And I have a universal definition of terrorism like the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism. As India ki proposal neko. India ki proposal ni UN da Masida Adugumbugi provision lai. And then CCIG provides a legal framework which makes it binding on all signatories to deny funds and safe haven to terrorist group. Provision India ki effort along with the internet on the international front. CTITF, okay, Financial Action Task Force. The India ki effort India joint tauba Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the RAT, Regional RAT is spelling anyone? Regional Anti-Terrorism Forum front Shanghai Cooperation Organization mechanism any multilateral organizations the India na terrorist deal sign agreement yanaba or bilateral measures mentioned and then India within the state of India UAPA Unlawful Prevention Act 1967 and amendment current affairs class to deal amendment not only the group but individuals can also now be identified as terrorists Unlawful Activities Prevention Act later. And Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Act, Prevention of Terrorist Act, lapse India effort even the Indian legislation pura ami mentioned but now lapse the main provision the UAPA. Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967 Indiana legislative partner on the other side legislative partner institutional side the NSG when NSG link Indira Gandhi assassinate NSG to fight terrorists or to deal with terrorists hijack hostage situation energy secretary and then we created NIA after Mumbai attack for investigation to any insurgency related issues mechanisms institutional mechanism and my humble request is no PDF notes by the end of mid-October, PDF set topic wise. But on my part, mid-October, late October, do I power PDF say internal security, the whole syllabus call. I pin the power war so on a because I'm little like preoccupied, and then adugi matam da khitang pinning ko, so I'm sorry for that. So please bear with me. Adu matam pa day class low kida vi ko, my class might be over by then. It will be over for sure, but I'll make sure that I send the PDF to all of you ko topic makise. So I think that is the end. Matam tara male is another ko. So if there is anything that we can discuss, then yeah, we can. So ngasi class the key takeaway di karino hairaga, the types of terrorism, the brief history of insurgency and terrorism in Kashmir, and then ako answer even the Kashmir history the EB insurgency in Kashmir so Kashmir issue the history do just passing reference to mention of you, just a passing reference. Yung nahangi border management nena ki question jing si happy jing se ko adum hana ngasai hek changa ko da kena taw sin dum iwa yagani hana hai do mayam mi khara pulling da so chana krena okay kana hana lairi okay right so si question se dum yang biu aduga attempt ige hairaga su EBU because hangre hairaga hangaroi haibana teko, because if you look at the previous 5-6 years paper recurring ne asigi question sidiko border issue sidi it's like life issue adum lairiba issue ne na it's a recurring theme, so kai belaite answer give the so I'll be here for 5 more minutes and then after that I'll end the class.